Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Today we're going to watch the situation in the Bible of the situation around birth and the impurity that goes along with it. And we're going to talk about leprosy, which is a situation that is following the text in the book of Leviticus and comes right after that. And this on the day that the funeral of Prince Philip of Great Britain is being buried. My condolences to everybody who is connected with this and who realizes that this broadcast, this live stream is going on right at the moment of the funeral that is taking place. Let's go to the text of Leviticus 14. Which is one chapter away from the situation of the birth impurity, but that to get a picture of what we're talking about. Leviticus 14 on the screen, verses 33 through 36. The Lord Adonai spoke to Moses and to Aaron, and he said, "When you have come into the land of Canaan, which I give to you for a possession, and I put the plague of leprosy in a house in the land of your possessions, then he who owns the house shall come and tell the priest, not the physician, but the priest, saying, there seems to me to be some sort of plague in the house. The priest shall come, he shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes in order to examine the plague, that all that is in the house not be made unclean. And afterward the priest shall go in order to inspect the house." This is a very interesting situation. It's a situation of what the Bible calls, in the English language, leprosy, which it isn't. Tzaraat is the Hebrew word, and you don't see it translated. There's no word for it. But you cannot translate it in terms of leprosy, but by lack of better, we will use the word. The Bible is really focusing this week, asking our attention for a special phenomena with people, and that is this impurity at birth and this so-called leprosy that can come when God sees reason for it. Again, it's totally different than the leprosy that we know in our times, with the dying and the falling off of members of the body, fingers and stuff like that. Yes, there is a similarity in that patients have to be at social distance, like with COVID and with other infectious diseases, but that doesn't make it the same thing. Now, there is a situation which I want to start with, and that is the impurity at birth, which is in chapter 13 of Leviticus. We read the chapter after that. And immediately asking a question, did king, prophet, the person who could see into the past and the present and the future, King David, did he talk about this and pronounce this and proclaim this in Psalms 51 verse 7? I read, "Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, in sin my mother conceived me." This is a psalm that sort of is used in order to prove that there is the inheritance of sin through the generations, which it doesn't prove. It only says that David has been in this particular situation with his mother, the particular situation which we should go into some other time, which has brought division into the family between David and the brothers. But the impurity of at birth, you should read it in Leviticus chapter 13, is not the same as the sinfulness of humankind in which David is born, and he had his share of it. It's a situation in which a mother who gives birth to a boy or a girl is impure, unclean, and she is unclean for 7 days when a baby boy has been born, plus 33 days of purification. At the birth of Yeshua in the New Testament, you read about it, and you see that the New Testament and the Gospel is Jewish, and the New Testament is as well. Read Luke 2 verse 22 on the screen also. When the days of their purification, the parents of Yeshua, according to the law of Moses, were fulfilled, they brought him up to Jerusalem to be presented to the Lord. So there is a 7 days of impurity after a boy and 33 days to become clean again, and 14 days of being impure, unclean, when a girl's been born, and 66 days of purification. Why the difference? Why impure? I want to focus our attention on this question why, because there is a problem that the Bible asks us to see. Why the difference and why the impurity? The mother gave life of all things. And then the Bible talks about purification blood. This is strange, and it should be strange in your ears as well. Where's the problem? What is the problem? The Bible speaks about purification, and blood is never, the blood of purification, blood is never a problem. Like for instance, when somebody has some kind of wound and it's bleeding, there's no problem with that. Only with menstruation, the monthly cycle, and with birth there is in the Bible. I guess it's not the blood itself that creates the problem, although blood is not to be eaten. But that is another thing. It has to do with it, it's connected with it, but it still is another situation because it has to do with the eating, not the blood itself. I don't think it's the blood. It's something around getting children. You think there's nothing wrong with it, but because this could be some kind of a contradiction, but these contradictions exist. There is for instance, the example of making purification water with the water and the ashes of a red heifer, a red cow. The maker of this water, in the Bible it's written like that, becomes unclean himself by making this special water, this special fluid. So there are commandments that are asked to be fulfilled, and yet they make the ones who fulfill it unclean. Yes, there is a text in the Bible that says, go and fulfill the earth, fill up the earth with children, and when we do so, we're unclean. There is a similarity here, a similarity. You can compare things as long as you know what you're comparing. So again, it's strange that there is a problem with getting children if there is a commandment. Like there's a strange and inexplicable thing with the making of this purification fluid. We all representatives of Adam and Eve were told to multiply ourselves. You would expect that when we do so, we would hear, well done, you faithful servants. But instead of that, we as parents were to bring a sacrifice. A sin sacrifice, what's the sin? With a pair of doves, not the blood of animals on the altar, but with a pair of doves. We're going to explain it, but we need to see the tension that is created in this good commandment, and then on the other hand, this sacrifice. All of a sudden, there's a sacrifice thing, and the police comes up after you've done a good thing. You won the race, and the police comes and says you get a speeding ticket. So Is it that the Eternal One gave us a contaminating commandment? Is the getting children, is that forbidden? Is it sinful? And because of that, the sin offering, the sin sacrifice? Again, at the birth of a boy, the mother is unclean for 7 days, and she stays unclean for 33 days. With a girl, it's double. 7 is 14 days unclean, and then 66 days staying unclean and in the purification blood. Why twice as long with a girl as with a boy? And why purification? Purification of what? How did we become unclean? What is unclean? When we're talking about fulfilling a commandment of the Lord. Birth has to do with blood, a little bit. In normal medical circumstances, there is some blood, but it's not much, that the mother is losing, and the just born baby most of the time doesn't bleed at all. Where is the normal situations I'm talking about? Where's the problem? Well, this is the thing I want to picture. First, took 10 minutes to do that, to ask the question. Now try to give an answer. Both mother and child, either boy or girl, have lived close together in a situation that is very evidently closer than with any other human being ever. Both with a boy and a girl, this is the situation. The child, the fetus, is in the uterus, stays there for 9 months, and there is a symbiosis that is so close that it is unique when that takes place. There is another situation that is mentioned of closeness, and that is in the Bible in the beginning, in the book of Genesis, when husband and wife become one flesh, it says. But mother and child become one soul, because the blood of the mother and that of the child have streamed, have in the blood circulation system, so close together. The child has its own or her own blood circulation system, and the mother has her own circulation system, and the systems come close. They come very close in the placenta, where there is an exchange of nutrients from the mother to the child, and of what the child breathes out, but it cannot breathe yet, from the child to the mother. 9 months. Now the Bible says in Leviticus 17, that's the next reading, that the soul of a human being with blood is in the soul. I'm sorry, the soul of a being with blood, people, but in 17:11 of Leviticus, it is an animal, a sacrificial animal, is in the blood. The soul is in the blood. In a moment, I'll tell you what soul means in the Bible. Now, it is so that the mother has her own identity and she has her own life, and she should allow her child to have the same. That's not always the case, and if it's not, then there is something wrong. Because mother and child live together for such a long time, there is a risk that their lives are connected, entangled too much. Their souls have an intense contact for 9 months, and there is an interaction that connects the both. In the Bible, there is the word soul, and it stands for several situations. It's the human being as person and individual. There is the soul is the seat of desire. Then it's also the seat of emotions and passions. Also, it's the center of the activity of the mind, and the center of the exploration, exploration, and the executing our will, and also the center of the formation of character, and in some cases of deformation of character. With girls, this influence of the mother, whose blood is so close with the soul of the mother to the blood of the child, the influence is even greater and vaster than with boys, in case the purification didn't take place, because later on in life, after birth, the mother becomes the role model of the girl. This is what we think is normally the situation. The mother gives her role model to girls, the father to boys. In case of the mother being the role model, the father is the confirmator, and the other way around. So the influence of the mother is great on the child, and even more so on the girl. And this might be the case, the situation, and the reason why the purification with girls is double compared with to the boys. This is all at the level of the human soul. Now it's interesting to see that there is a commandment in order to multiply ourselves. We have executed that so perfectly, too much, that the whole earth has been filled up with human beings out of proportion, way out of proportion. But that's another situation for a later study. But in connection with the early order commandment in Genesis to multiply, there is another commandment in Genesis 2 verse 24, which gives you and me, I guess, the idea of we have to break this soul connection. Read with me on the screen Genesis chapter 2 verse 24. It says, "Therefore a man will leave his father and his mother, and he will join with his wife, and they will be one flesh." Now this commandment is not saying you should all marry and you should all do this, but it says that in case of a man and a woman meeting each other, the only way to be successful in that relationship is to leave the father and the mother, meaning leaving the home has nothing to do with the home. On the contrary, this time of the Bible, even into the time of the beginning of the common era, Christian era, also called, the living quarters were such that people lived in housing situations where the grandmother or great-grandmother or great-great-grandmother and father lived with the grandfather and the parents and the children, the grandchildren and the grand-grandchildren. So it's not that. It is a breaking of the connection on soul level that needs to take place. Here it says it, and I think that the blood purification at birth is exactly a result of this commandment. The connection between this man and his wife is only possible and successful if on the and this is a condition, if the connection on soul level is broken, soul level with the mother, and later on with the role model of the father, that comes also. The entanglement of souls needs to be loosened and broken, so that there is a distancing that it should take place. It's like the umbilical cord that needs to be cut, but then that's on a physical level. And this is not only necessary of a bond with a partner. It is also there is the connection with the mother, and then later on with the parents, both of them 20 years later, as we read in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. It's the Bible itself that gives the hint for breaking this special bond that could lead to unwanted situations. Reason: a human being should learn to stand on his own, her own. A human being should be able to make decisions, learn to make decisions, not being influenced by one or both parents, or people in the street, or what kind of circles you're in. An example, we need to learn to make decisions, to make the right decisions in life. Now, this is purposely that I'm saying the right decision. It's vague, I know, and I'm doing it on purpose, because you can apply this in all these situations where we have to choose, where we have to make decisions, and we need our common sense and our wisdom, and not our connection and entanglement with our soul, with parents, or with the mother, because it can be an influence that would change and has an impact on making the right decisions. That's one example. The other one is the breaking of family traditions. When they are damaging, when they are wrong, they should be broken. By the choice of a partner, we should be on our own and not being helped by parents. In order to make a direct relationship of a person with God, it should not be influenced by other people. You can have people who witness of their faith, but I wonder if that has to do with talking and giving the right formula in which you have to use certain words in order to please the Lord, or that the witnessing is in the form of teaching and in the form of being an example by living your life. There's an example. There's a person that you might know. His name is Movsha Zaharovich. Don't mention his last name for the moment. Born in Russia, Movsha Zaharovich. His father is a herring handler. The family is Hasidic Jewish. Movsha is the oldest one of 9 children. And they're all having their own capacities and their things they're good at. Movsha is good in drawing. He draws scenes of a Jewish village where he lived. Now, the culture of the family, the culture of the society in which he lives, is such that Movsha should become a rabbi or a physician or an attorney. But he doesn't. He chooses to be a drawer of paintings, making a painter. Movsha moves from his surroundings in white Russia, Belarus, to Paris, and he gets really good in making paintings. Even dares, Jew as he is, to paint the crucified Messiah. And he changes his name even. All these things. He changes his name from Movsha Zaharovich, not his last name, but only his first name. His name becomes Mark. His Russian family name Chagall. He dares to break with his culture, with the environment, with society that he lived in. That a society that can strongly judge you if you're original enough to make decisions like Marc Chagall made in his life. Like every culture and every religion has this kind of influence which can be damaging. And every mother who didn't go through the birth purification. That does not mean at all to break with your mother and never having anything to do with her or with the father. But it has to do with the mother letting her child fly out of the nest, and his father the same. No control, no ruling over, no manipulation, no suppressing or oppressing, but a nice accompanying and helping, assisting to leave the parents, the house, the choosing of religion, the choosing of a partner, and stuff like that. And not saying, if you do this, then I'll never talk to you again. Don't do that. As child, you need to learn to let your mother go in your thinking, in your way of choice. So I cannot take her as a good example. Yes, you can. But after the breaking first, and then pick the good things, because there is always the risk of imitating your mother. If you're not aware of the wrong behavior of the mother, certain words, certain patterns, if you don't break them, you will imitate them. And don't compare how great the food of your mother was, and how she really cuddled you and took care of you, and she was so much more caring than your partner, or stuff like that. You might end every possible relationship that you might build up at this moment by continuing to compare with your father, who was the greatest father and the greatest man. There's no one like him. You'll never succeed. Or the other way around with a woman or a man. Is it possible that a normal relationship with a partner can only start when first this connection, this entanglement of souls is broken with the mother? That was that sacrifice of the pigeons that Leviticus talks about, that needed to take place. For what? For a sin that you never committed, that you were not aware of? No. To be aware of this entanglement that needs to be broken. Something in you needs to die. There's a song that a female singer used to sing in Holland. Bloeme is her last name, and I don't remember her first name at this moment. And she talks about being the daughter of her mother, and then her mother dies, and she stops being daughter. But in her thinking, she continues to be. Yes, not wrong at all. As long as there is the purification, because God is not unwise when he says this. He knows that there is a continuation of a connection that could ruin, that could derail you, that could influence you in making the kind of decisions you would make in a different way had this soul entanglement be broken. This pigeon sacrifice the parents of Yeshua made as well, of course. It's the uterus, which has been the home where this connection of souls took place between mother and child, either boy or girl. Sounds cozy, and was important for the girl, for the child, because it needed to make contact with earth. It needed to come home from a different place. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the text in the Bible, which we will see in a moment, but not yet. After we leave a certain place, which I will mention in a moment, after we leave from a certain place, and this place is described by Solomon, the preacher, Ecclesiastes, we're talking about. And he and we will return to that place. God, the light, heaven, when we pass away. It's to be found in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 6 and 7, and we read it on the screen. It says, "Before the silver cord is severed, and the golden bowl is broken, and the pitcher is broken at the spring, and the wheel is broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God, who gave it." Aha. So the place where we were is where God is. This spirit comes into the fetus, in the uterus, and this spirit comes from heavenly glory and now has to live for 80, 100, 120 or 3 years, how short or how long, however long, on earth. So there's a time for earthing, and there's a time for rooting. 9 months, then it's over with. And then there needs to be a purification, because we do our life, our whole life cycle, of which our earthly part is only a facet, in steps. And one of these steps is being in heaven, and one is to come down in the uterus of our mother as a fetus with the spirit that comes from heaven, and we need to root, and that is a stage, and then we go on to the next stage on earth, and there is then later on the stage where the man and the wife as well need to leave father and mother and join, and they will be one flesh, stuff like that. So you're leaving a heavenly place, and the uterus is the place to get in touch with earth and life on earth, this valley of the shadow of death David talks about, and that needs to be broken. For the mother, a necessity, as well as for the child, in order to grow up healthily. This is that process where through which every human being goes through, with all care and all respect for fathers and mothers, and not hating them as Yeshua talks about, because he doesn't talk about hating as we use these words, but Yeshua talks about this breaking of the entanglement of souls. So we're talking about purification of human presence, of the entanglement of two souls, or three. I'll talk about it in a minute. Not in a minute, but I will during this study. Of more during the being in the uterus. Of a home that was the place of this coziness. One step further, birth is also the image of the creation of humankind. We are not finished when we're born. There is more to be done. You can see this already. For instance, our blood circulation system as fetus, when we're in the uterus, is different than at the moment that we're born. At the moment that we're born, we use our lungs, which all of a sudden need more blood. They did not get that at the moment, all the 9 months that we were in the uterus, because we would drown. And so there was a different way of getting the blood from our heart to our lungs and then back into the heart and stuff like that. Look, you can search in Google search for ductus botalli, Botalli, and you'll see what I mean. There's a whole range of changes that take place. That is only one example for not being finished when we're coming into this world. But there's more that makes us unfinished, because we're created with a heart of stone. Prophets talk about the heart of flesh would come later, Ezekiel says. So at the moment that the Eternal One created human beings, there is something which he created which was not perfect at all. And I can imagine that, like parents, and especially the mother who becomes unclean when the child is born, the Eternal One, forgive me if I say so, that I say this, became unclean, and he loaded this uncleanliness on Messiah. What is Messiah? Messiah is God's facility to come on earth as a human being. He loaded this impurity unto Messiah, who became sacrifice at the creation of the world. And 2000 years ago in the physical world, this was then the repetition, shall I say, of what took place in eternity, where there is no time, where time doesn't exist. Messiah gave up his life. At what age? 33 years old, like the mother uses 33 days in order to become clean at the birth of a boy. Coincidence? Don't think so. Heavenly home was defiled. So a sacrifice of pigeons is asked, is demanded. A pigeon is a heavenly animal in the sense that it flies, in contrast to a cow, which most of the time cannot fly. Strong wind perhaps, but that's it. So the sacrifice of Messiah at age 33 is in a way connected to this pigeon sacrifice after 33 days for boys. There's a connection, I think. What does it mean for us today is then the practical question. I'm hearing you asking this question. We are still having this impurity, the mix of our soul and our, at least our mother, perhaps more, but also another soul at the time of still being a fetus. What to do, even now that we have reached the age that we are having at this moment? What to do when this prescribed purification, which Yeshua had, didn't take place with us? What we need to do is this. We need to become aware and conscious of the invisible routine of bonds that exist between parents, the mother and you, the mother and me. We need to become aware of those things that should be broken by this animal sacrifice, which is not magical. The parents still, it wasn't a reminder, the parents still had to do their thing in order to break those entanglements of souls. Now we need to consciously break those relations, especially the negative sayings that you perhaps heard your mother say to you, even words like you should not have been born, or something like that. Some mothers say strange things. I don't know why, but even the good things, also the good things, the positive things, the negative things, everything needs to go through the light, and we need to have this whole existence in the uterus, these 9 months of intense contact of souls. Needs to be held against the light. 9 months of blood that streamed so closely in proximity. There is a scientific article. I think there was a study in 2011 where there is an entanglement of soul, which they were searching for between twins. This is the thing that I talked about, the third one, between twins. The twins, the souls of a twin in the uterus. The study is presented in the magazine Scientific American. Perhaps you heard of it, Scientific American, and the URL, which I'll give you, is a shortened URL for all intents and purposes. I'll give you the URL right now. It is https, you know about this, https colon / then the letters, small letters, is.gd, then another / only one. I'll repeat it. And then come 6 letters. Capital H, capital C, small m as in Mary, small d, the digit 8, and the capital C. Now we'll repeat. https colon / is as in Simon .gd / followed by capital H, capital C, small m as in Mary, small d, digit 8, capital C. So if this examination, this study, proves that there is contact between twins, then I can imagine that that also has an impact on both of them when they are born. But what in case one of them is not born and was lost during the pregnancy? I can imagine that in case of an unborn half of a twin, in which one of them was born prematurely and died, during the pregnancy, the staying fetus will have experienced the departure, which will lead then, I think, to missing, to mourning, and without you being aware of what it was that makes you missing and mourning. But if you are aware of these feelings of missing and mourning, it's good to pray and to say, Lord, if this is because my mother had this miscarriage of one of a brother or sister I might have had, because there was a small bleeding, or perhaps not even so small, during the time that she was pregnant of me. And then this is the way to talk about this in our times right now. This is the uncleanliness after birth. Now the second thing is the plague of leprosy, a word that is not the right translation, but by lack of a better word we use this. Let's read 2 Kings chapter 7 verse 3 through 6 in the context of a larger text. There we go. There were 4 lepers. 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate. They said one to another, "Why do we sit here until we die? If we say we will enter into the city, then the famine in the city is there, and we shall die there. But if we sit here still, we will also die. So, therefore, come on, let us surrender to the army of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we will live, and if they kill us, then we will only die. But we have more chances of survival." They rose up in the twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. When they had come to the outermost part of the camp of the Syrians, behold, there was no man there. For the Lord had made the army of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, and even the noise of a great army. And they said one to another, "Behold, the king of Israel has hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come on us." One of the matters that are a matter of impurity and contamination is our inkling of letting our faith down, of not being interested so much anymore. First, we were very enthusiastic. We showed initiative. We wanted to reach the whole world with our enthusiasm. But more and more our enthusiasm was dying out. More and more we went to use and lean on the people who led the services in our congregations, for instance. And we read studies of important leaders and speakers and learned people instead of thinking for ourselves. Less and less we were willing to actively be involved for our faith community in the first place, and the rest of the community of the world after that. Perhaps it is even so that this dependence on other people and not having your own initiative anymore, lack of initiative, has to do with the dependence we have as just born people, where the purification after birth didn't take place. Now the text of the birth purification and the text of this weakness of faith they are close together. First comes the birth, then comes the leprosy, perhaps not without reason. So this leprosy, this tzaraat in Hebrew, stands for this becoming weak and becoming depending on other people, initiative, in responsibility, in co-own your congregation, in thinking, in giving hints to the leader, the speaker, the learned person. Hey, you should perhaps Mr. Sir so-and-so, woman, whatever. You should perhaps think of new ways to, and so on. And more open for talking behind people's back, because this is also part of this plague. This is why leprosy is mentioned in the situation with the sister, the sister of Moses in Numbers. Chapter 12, verse 10. It comes on the screen. I will read for you. Short text. Miriam, the sister of Moses, was leprous. She had this tzaraat, as white as snow. That's a special detail, the white as snow. If you read it in the text, you'll see that means that it was not the contagious one and was easily healable. So how to get rid of this? In our days, I think to fire yourself up and get this strength to break through the weakness of will, to learn to have your own initiative in the context of the world in which you live, not your initiative and you think, oh, people follow me because I'm the leader now. That's not what we're asking. Your own initiative, your own enthusiasm should come back. And not only today, because you hear this, oh yes, I'm going to do this for an hour. No, this is a lifetime thing. You need to continue to break through your laziness, because that's what it is. So laziness of the soul. And this is what happens in the text in the Haftarah, in this second king text. A miraculous healing of leprous men. It's like what Yeshua does in the text of today in the Gospel of Luke, which we'll read in a minute. The men are having this plague. They go to the camp of the enemy, and the army base is empty. In the tents, there is possessions, food. Israel is encamped and is in danger, grave danger, and there is all of a sudden there is a change in the situation, a game changer, because the enemies is fled in panic. They should mention this to the Israeli leadership, because that would be good for everybody. But having this plague, this narrowing of consciousness, this only taking care of yourself, they don't do that at first. So their plague reaction, their plague response is they go to the enemy who is not there to steal and to eat. In verse 8 you'll read this. It's on the screen. When these lepers came to the outermost part of the camp, they went into one tent and ate and drank, and they carried their silver and gold and clothing and iPhones and stuff like that, and they went and hid it. Then they came back and entered into another tent and carried there also, and went and hid it as well. That's the response of a person who is not healed of this disease, which we all might have. But then comes the response and comes the miraculous change. See the same chapter, then verse 9 on the screen. Then they said to another, all of a sudden, hey, listen, we aren't doing right. This is not right what we're doing. This day is a day of good news and we keep silent? Now that's an interesting sentence. This is a day of good news and we keep silent? If we wait until the morning light, punishment will overtake us. Now therefore come, let us go and tell the king's household. So the leprosy they had was gone. They broke it by all of a sudden seeing the light. without a person helping them with this. It was the spontaneous breach through their own initiative and their own responsibility. That's a good way of breaking with this horrible disease. So when was the time that you felt the response in yourself after a good Bible study of a speaker? The response in yourself, this day is the day of good news, and I keep silent? Don't keep silent. That's what happens after the healing that Yeshua does in the text of the New Testament. Let's read it. It's Luke chapter 17, verse 11 through 19. Let's read. It happened, as Yeshua was on his way to Jerusalem, they came from the Banyas, which was last week, the text, that he was passing along the borders of Samaria and Galilee, West Bank, they say nowadays. As he entered into a certain village, 10 men who were lepers met him, but they stood at social distance. It's like COVID-19 time. They lifted up their voices and said, Yeshua, Master, have mercy on us. When he saw them, he said to them, go show yourselves to the priests. Strange, because they were lepers. You don't go to the priest. Although it says in the Bible that if you have this special disease, go to the priest, show yourself. The priest might say, hey, it's gone. It happened that as they went, they were cleansed. Miraculous healing by Messiah. Now see what happens. The healing is not the important thing. One of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, glorified the Lord with a loud voice. He fell on his face, not by accident, on purpose, at the feet of Yeshua and gave him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan, despicable Samaritan. Yeshua answered, weren't all 10 cleansed? Answer, yes. So where are the other 9? Were there none found who returned to give glory to the Lord except this stranger? Then he said to him, get up, go your way, your trusting faith has healed you. This is the contrast with the other 9. They were healed by miracle. Miracle doesn't help you. It's a sign in order to come into action. But if you are healed by your faith, then you have done it yourself. That is to say, faith only means trust. It's like when you go to the dentist. You heal yourself by what? By having faith in the dentist. How do you show your faith? Open your mouth. That's all. So the becoming weak and the putting your soul into the mode of receiving, of reception, has a result like hardening your heart. Nothing can catch your attention. Nothing can make you enthusiastic. Where's your gladness? Where is your gratefulness? Realize that gratefulness and being thankful and being glad are symptoms of faith in God. Very strong means that you need to use. It's the other way around. You think, I cannot force myself to be glad. No, but you better. I cannot be thankful if I have nothing to be thankful for. Think hard. There are reasons to be thankful for. And of trust that God uses people to build his kingdom. And I'm not talking about myself being the study giver and you listening and saying, oh, this guy is good. No, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you. You are the person with whom God is building his kingdom. He wants to. So allow yourself to be healed. Open your mouth. Restore your childlike enthusiasm. Leprosy means in old Israel being on your own and soul searching. Like Corona today is has a obligation of social distancing, and I'm not saying that Corona and this leprosy are the same. Not at all. On the contrary, but there is one little similarity, and that is social distancing, soul search. Good thing to do. You saw it in Luke chapter 17, verse 12 on the screen as last verse of today. As he entered into a certain village, 10 men who were lepers met him, but they stood at a social distance. You could use this time of Corona in order to heal from this plague. Use this time of loneliness. It looks a little bit like the same thing, but it's totally something different. The rest is different. As a help, as a way of assisting to really breaking not only this leprosy, shall I call it, this low way of faith, this low level of being enthusiastic or lack of enthusiasm at all, but also this entanglement of souls that we all caught when we were born. Work at it, become aware of it, take your time to think about this. This being in bondage to father, to mother on soul level. There needs to be a breaking of this soul entanglement. Most of us are born sound and healthy, but not finished. And so we need to give attention to this uncleanliness by the entanglement of souls that need to be separated. You see that Messiah, which is God's capacity to come on earth as a human being, that Messiah is really like every other human being. His parents kept Torah with this pigeon sacrifice. Like the parents of Moshe Zacharovich Chagall, later Mark Chagall, they kept Torah. Which is saying that in this Torah there is the hint, more than a hint, to do this cleansing, to do this healing, to search for it. With the sacrifice of Yeshua, which I painted to you in terms of God giving birth and then becoming to mankind, humankind, becoming impure himself. With this sacrifice, we break loose from unwanted relationships, like Moshe Zacharovich Chagall also broke with his traditions, and yet at the same time we bind ourselves to heaven, like Mark Chagall did with his paintings about Yeshua as the crucified one. With heaven, with the heaven where God in his fullness lives, where Yeshua is Messiah. We don't keep silent when we hear good news on the day of the glad message, like those lepers said. All of a sudden we realize this day is a day of good message, good news, and we keep silent. Yeshua is the condition to come into the coming world and to return our spirit we received back to the place where it came from. Who is expecting Messiah is on the right track. And with that, I wish you a good week. Perhaps you can catch some more moments of the funeral, Prince Philip. My condolences once again. And let's do some healing, and let's search our souls in order to become the free people God wants us to be, clearly. Shabbat Shalom.